I was completely surrendered to God. And it's like, if it's my time, it's my time. I didn't pray to be healed. I prayed for the highest good. And I don't know what that is. And I do think, it was my spiritual practice that saved my life, certainly. And it was my spiritual practice that just revealed to me the sacred truth of my eternal nature.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Regan Caruthers, who is a spiritual teacher and a former Silicon Valley executive, to share her journey. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. What if success isn't the house, the car, or the title, but the ability to sit quietly, breathe through your heart, and feel gratitude on demand? Regan's journey took her from early spiritual training, meditation at age 3, daily Tai Chi, and lessons in divine love, to rejecting those teachings in pursuit of worldly success. She rose fast in the corporate world, but discovered that achievements without coherence left her broken. Only when she returned to her early practices of devotion and discipline did her life fully transform. Today, she's the founder of Asset Yoga Center, dedicating her work to guiding others towards intimacy with themselves, emotional sovereignty, and conscious connection to the divine. In our conversation, we'll explore her journey and her book, Tragic Magic, the science and spirituality of HeartMath, and the discipline and devotion that helped her to heal and saved her life. Let's meet Regan. Welcome to Richer Soul, Regan Caruthers. It's great to have you join us today.
Well, it's good to be here, Rocky. Thank you.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Oh, wow. I would say my school taught me nothing about money. I mean, my early schooling, that definitely was not its emphasis. And what I learned, mostly tacitly, not explicitly, was frankly that money doesn't make you happy. Doesn't mean it makes you unhappy, but that it is, I don't know. My father lived for a good amount of years in a 10,000 square foot palace. And I used to notice when I was there that we only hung out in one room. So it seemed kind of silly that all the rest was there. And I remember his 60th birthday party in this old, historic, enormous, ridiculous house with all of the, the finest of St. Louis and their immaculate clothing. And, by the end of the night, they're all, not all of them, but throwing up in the bushes because they've had too much to drink. And then, yeah. And my mother, she wasn't materially oriented at all. which, was not great. And so she really struggled. So a lot of my childhood around money was informed by contrast. My father, who was quite wealthy and lived quite extravagantly, and my mother, who at one time had to sell her childhood China dolls to make her mortgage. So, yeah, my upbringing was complex. My mother was mentally ill. My father was absent. When he died, he was characterized as the greatest legal mind of the second half of the 20th century in St. Louis, and then left me to deal with my violent stepdad and my mentally ill mother. So, that was complicated.
It sounds like
Does that answer your
you went
question?
through a lot.
Yeah.
It does. But it's curious how you found that answer that money doesn't make you happy, because that's not usually an answer a kid learns.
Yeah. And I remember, my father at the age of 16 had a full ride to Harvard, but he was living in a boarding house and they didn't have the money to send him to Boston, even though once he got here to Boston, he would have been well taken care of. And as I saw him struggle relationally, not professionally, though that did come a little bit later with bad real estate investing, I remember telling him, because I rebelled and I wasn't going to do anything Ivy League. And when I got my first job at Prentice Hall right out of college, when typically they only hire people from the most competitive schools, I was like, see, Dad, it all ended up okay. I went to a state school, had a blast. So, anyway, I was just built to carve my own way. And at a very early age, in fact, my first sentence was, I want to do it all by myself. So, around 18 months, I'd already decided that I could rely on no one but me. So I was pretty aware. I was pretty conscious. I was pretty aware of what not to emulate.
Where did that come from?
Probably my mother. She was incredibly intelligent, psychic, a woman born in the wrong time. She was born in 33, chosen by the Red Cross in 1949 as the Second World War had ended to represent the Red Cross to post-war Europe and speak to other youth delegations. She dated a king. Anyway, she was very insightful. She was just dysregulated and unable to kind of like metabolize her intelligence. But I think anything that I have in terms of capacity for insight, to draw meaning from a circumstance, I got from her.
That's interesting. And it's funny because I know we talked about money, but you always seem to have the ability to make money.
Yes. It's one of my superpowers. It's a superpower I have.
Yeah. And yet you're not kind of attached to it.
Not at all. And the older I get, the less attached, because just like anything, right? Nothing has inherent meaning. We assign the meaning. And that's true with money as well. I need to eat. I need to have shelter. I need to have an automobile, maybe. There's things that we need that money provides. But what I've seen is the identification, right? The egoic relationship. I remember this guy that I had hired to help me on social media. Anyway, he had just posted from Burning Man and said, the most successful people are here. And all I wanted to say in response is, how do you define that? What do you mean? It typically has a material answer. That's not how I define success.
But yet there's no money at Burning Man.
No, he just meant the important people
I know
that
that,
were
but
there.
it's funny how people make meaning, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Going back to what you said. Let's pause there for a moment, because this is something that I don't know if people truly understand,
Okay.
is what it means to create meaning for something and how we program ourselves with this. Would you be able to explain that?
I mean, I can explain how I've come to do it. I can't really explain how others do. To me, the whole point of existing is to be conscious of your own divinity and have a conscious relationship with this incredibly benevolent force that created you. That's to me the point. So, how devoted can I be? How much of a service orientation can I have in a day? And in a lot of the work that I do with my clients, it's about unpacking and getting them to realize that most of what they believe is handed down to them. So we're programmed, right? And I was lucky. My program in early childhood was that I was divine and that prayer and conscious connection to love was what was most important. And I learned meditation at the age of 3 and sang devotional songs, all the while reading Shakespeare and learning algebra and learning Latin. So the program that was instilled in me was this relationship. And I see a lot of people, particularly later in life, what I would call the fourth quarter, when they're doing the life review, they're getting, acquainted with the fact that they're going to die, right? That's one thing we're all guaranteed to do. And yet none of us are prepared, right? We're not at peace, most of us, about how we've lived, the choices we've made. We're not sure what's going to happen next, like all of that. And yet we spend our whole life not attending to understanding any of it. So that seems kind of like you missed the boat.
Well, they've been programmed to take a different boat, societally, whatever.
Well, and it's by design. It's not like it's some sort of random program that's running.
Where does that design come from?
By the people who are benefiting from the belief. Whether you look at public education and its intent, right? And that hasn't changed, right? The model of public education hasn't changed a bit. And that was to make good, obedient workers, right? Sit down, shut up. If you have to go to the bathroom, you have to ask permission. I mean, all of it just, again, is so absurd to me.
You had a different kind of education, though, in early childhood, correct?
I sure did.
So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Again, thank goodness for my mother. My father wanted me to go to community school, which is where the rich kids in St. Louis went. And my mother was like, oh, no, she's going to Forsyth. I was 3 years old when my mother enrolled me there. That was a school founded by 3 women, all of whom had advanced degrees. And this was 1970, just to give you context in terms of time. And they had all met because of their love of a man named Charles Fillmore, who had created the Unity Church. He had actually created a prayer ministry that became a church. Anyway, so they started a preschool, and all they wanted was for the spiritual principles that they understood and lived by to be present in a school environment. So how do you do that? Well, you provide the child a lot of freedom. So there was no grades. There was no grading. Everything was customized to your interests, to your, capacity. We all kind of knew, even though we were in the yellow room or the red room, you knew if you were in the smart group or not. I mean, they couldn't take away those kinds of comparisons that I think human beings, even as children, make. But at the age of 3, I learned meditation. So that's how we started the day. We started the day meditating, and then we sang songs. I have some of the lyrics in my book of these, all of which were affirming. So Maxwell Maltz, who had written the book Psycho-Cybernetics, which had birthed the positive psychology movement, was on the board of the school. So a lot of the pedagogy was reflective of his research, which is kind of similar to the whole money thing, in that what he realized or witnessed as a plastic surgeon, when he would heal somebody of great disfigurement, some of those people went on to live lives of high self-esteem and and others acted as if they were still disfigured. And so he was curious, well, what's the difference? And he began to understand that the story you tell yourself is what you will create and what you will know. And so in the curriculum, even though everybody was kind of doing different things, it was the songs that affirmed that every thought and feeling you have is your choice. People don't think that. We have all sorts of make me language, that makes me mad, as if we have nothing to do with it. And Maxwell Maltz was like, no, even though it may not be conscious, you always have choice. So that's incredibly empowering. And I learned mostly through osmosis of the environment, the freedom of sovereignty, right? Emotional sovereignty. And growing up with a mentally ill mother and a violent stepdad and a famous father who wasn't around, I mean, thank God I learned what I did, because the chaos of my environment, while it impacted me and affected choices like my first marriage, it never affected how I felt about myself, because I had this other set of tools. And, as a kid, I wasn't conscious of any of this. That all came later. But, I tell friends, like, given my upbringing, I should be like in jail or like a drug addict or, members of a gang or something. I mean, like all the things. But instead, I just knew that whatever it was that I wanted, I could create myself. And so going back to your reflection about my capacity always to make money, yeah, that's true. I mean, I had been out of the workforce for 7 years, working at HeartMath, thinking I was going to save the world. And my husband announces one day that we're running out of money. And so did I doubt myself? Like, oh, am I going to have issues re-entering the academic publishing world? That never even occurred to me. I was like, oh, okay, this is what I now need to do. I'll do it. And I have the capacity to do it.
That's not a normal operating system.
There is nothing normal about me. Except for maybe how I look, the pretty blonde. Yeah, that's about this physicality is normal. That's all the normalcy I have to offer. And it's probably not even normal, this.
Well, the good news is I think COVID opened people's eyes to education, and people are making different choices in much greater numbers than they ever had. And yet at the other side, people are not making choices and getting stuck in an ever spiraling system that's going further down. So, people talk about the haves and the have-nots. I think it's the do's and the do-nots more so because it's a choice. And a lot of people are making a choice, and that's up to them.
Yeah, they're just not conscious that that's what they're doing. I mean, people as a collective, and again, it's by design, are incredibly distracted. Most people are having to hold 2 or 3 jobs just to, make ends meet. So they don't have a lot of perceived bandwidth for inner healing, conscious communion with God, being led by a higher intelligence within, like all the things. So they just want, they want relief. So they find it in processed food and ultra processed food and watching that big box in their house whose actual electromagnetic frequency is the closest that you could ever find to apathy. So they're, getting inundated with the frequency of apathy all night long, wondering why they don't have a lot of energy to change their lives.
That makes sense. Now, you ended up in Silicon Valley working for HeartMath.
I ended up in Santa Cruz working for HeartMath. And then when my husband announced at the time we were running out of money and I needed to return to work, because HeartMath was more like I was a renunciate. I was making $12 an hour. People thought I was crazy to leave corporate world to do that. Anyway, Yeah, when I headed back into academic publishing at McGraw-Hill, and I did that for about 5 years as a director of e-learning for them, then that, pivoted me into Silicon Valley, into the whole ed tech industry, which I worked in that from 2000, from 2000 to about 2014. Yeah, I was in that world.
HeartMath has done a lot of work on monitoring and measuring within the human body. And also, it's how to have coherence, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, can you explain that? Because we've never really talked that much about HeartMath and what it does.
Oh, sure. So, to me, HeartMath is ancient wisdom packaged for a Western audience through a biomedical model. So, what the techniques, so there's three, I would say three elements to HeartMath. There's the research of the Institute, and they took the lead on understanding heart rate variability, the relationship of heart rate variability and emotion and cognition and health. And they had a breakthrough study in the mid 90s published by the American Journal of Cardiology. And that really put them on the map, showing the difference between when you feel gratitude and what your heart rate variability looks like, contrasted with frustration, which looks more like an earthquake. So there's that. And then they develop tools, techniques, methods for people to emotionally self-regulate, to create that coherence in their HRV. And then later, we were working on it when I was there in the 90s, but they developed technology. And a lot of people now equate HeartMath with technology, which I think is so silly because that's not the point. It's just a way to see what's going on, but it's not going to get you there. Technology is not going to help you, really. So, so they have that. And the essence of it is twofold. It's to consciously know how to connect to the felt sense of love and gratitude while directing the breath through the heart. So that is an ancient practice called metta in Buddhism. I don't know what it's called in all the religions, but it's been around a while.
It's funny because I bought the device and I do measurements just to see where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
But then they have the one app that supposedly you can figure out how to do what you're talking about, but I've never figured out how to do that. Where they never explained what you were supposed to do to make it kind of like that.
Well, in the app itself, which is free, anybody can download the app. All of the techniques are reviewed in the app. All of the research is in the app. So you can actually learn the methods in the app without ever even buying the sensor, which, shows you your HRV and your physiological coherence and all of that. So you have this afferent nerve called the vagus nerve that connects the heart and the brain. So and every time your heart beats, it generates an electromagnetic wave of energy, right? That's why, you're in a boardroom, nothing's being said, and it's going to be a shitty meeting. Like you can feel it, right? That you're not psychic. What you're picking up on is the electromagnetics of the people in the room. So anyway, when you create coherence through conscious connection to love and gratitude, and you create this easeful rhythm in your heart, well, the energy, that easeful rhythm is what gets communicated up the vagus nerve to the brain, and it facilitates cortical function, right? So think about the last time you were angry. And then you said that stupid thing that later when you weren't angry, you're like, what the hell was that? Why did I say that? Well, it's a physiological consequence of the incoherence of the heart rhythm in that you can't access the higher reasoning centers of the brain. It's a physiological impossibility. You can't be angry and frustrated and smart at the same time. Newsflash.
Newsflash. I guess I have to read the instructions.
Yeah, start there.
Start there.
Or we can meet after this podcast and literally in matter of minutes, I can teach you the essence of all of the HeartMath methods because it's basically the same. Put your focus here and it helps to close your eyes to start. Direct the inhales and exhales through the nose, counting to 5 as you inhale, 5 as you exhale, and direct the breath through the heart. So it's as if you're breathing through the center of your chest. And then recall a moment in your life when you felt profound love. And beyond the image of that moment in time was how it felt. That's where the magic is. So you re-experience that feeling while continuing to direct the breath through the heart. That's basically it.
Had they made the instructions that simple, I would have.
Well, maybe if I were still working there, that would have happened, but probably not.
It's okay. So we're here to talk about your book. What inspired you to write the book, Tragic Magic?
God told me to. Yeah, I've got this thing where that energy tells me stuff. And that's been true ever since I was a kid. I mean, I tell this in the book that I was 13, maybe, going to the orthodontist with my mother. I'm bullied in school. School is a big, fat, unsafe drag. My home is violent. It's like all a hot mess. And I'm in the car with my mom and it's quiet, which is a miracle. If you knew her, it was never quiet, but it was for whatever reason. And this voice says, you need to repeat the 9th grade. Because I was 2 years ahead of myself because of my grade school where you just went at your own pace. And I was so little and everybody's developing physically. I'm still looking like a boy. Anyway, it was just awful. And so I say to my mother, as she's driving, I said, Mom, I need to repeat the 9th grade. I'm going to need to catch up with myself eventually anyway. And she said in response, oh, honey, I don't know a thing about that, but you have my full support. And I found myself weeks later presenting to the Parkway School District with my social emotional argument for why a straight A student should be able to repeat a grade, because there was no policy mechanism to allow that to happen. And I got them to agree. And that was a turning point in my adolescent life and gave me sort of the direct experience of the audible quality of that voice, the felt sense of that voice. And it's a voice that continues to tell me what to do. And as long as I do what it says, I'm good.
This episode of Richer Soul is sponsored by the Profit Answer Man podcast. If you're a business owner who wants to scale and grow, increase profits, or want to have strategic conversations around your financials, then check out the podcast. You'll learn how to work less, increase cash flow, increase profits, and build reserves to help you weather storms. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. So I'm sure you've heard the voice other times. Have there been other times that it's told you to do something that worked out for you?
Oh, probably the biggest thing ever. So this is December of 21. It's a spoiler. Buy my book anyway, even though you're going to know this. Anyway, I was in Joshua Tree working on my book, and I was escaping all the COVID nonsense in California because we were basically locked down for 2 years, and I just needed space. Like, I didn't have a COVID house. There wasn't like, my husband was doing like Zoom meetings all day long in the living room. I mean, I just needed to get out of there. So I'm in the middle of the high desert with the intent to write. I always prayed and meditated before I began to write. And on this fateful evening in December of 21, that trusted voice said, you must urgently move home. So that meant St. Louis. I was literally had a gorgeous house on Monterey Bay, living in this resort community, like in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And I don't hesitate. I literally come out of meditation, see if I have enough bars to make a phone call. I first call a friend in St. Louis who's a realtor saying, says I got to move urgently. I do what I'm told. And I called my husband and said, I'm flying out of Palm Springs in the morning. God says I have to move urgently to St. Louis. And he's like, well, I'm not getting in the way of God. Okay. So now it's March of 22, and I'm in the country in rural Missouri, an hour outside of St. Louis. I have 10 acres. I have my own water, which I wanted after being in a drought for so long with my $400 water bills. I was teaching yoga on my back lawn while I was renovating a 3,000 square foot building on my property into my yoga center. And again, in meditation. So this is now May of 22. The voice says urgently, again, urgence in both directives, you need to go to a doctor. I'm like, okay, God, sure. So I find a country doctor on Google, go to see him the next day, because you can do that when you live in a small town. And what do doctors do? They listen to your heart. And he, puts the stethoscope here and says, Regan, something's terribly wrong. We need to get you scheduled for an echocardiogram as quickly as possible. And so 2 days later, after getting the echo the following day, I learned I was dying and that I had a birth defect in my heart and that the only solution was emergency open heart surgery to replace my aortic valve. Well, the reason God called me back to St. Louis, I live an hour west, is that the hospital where I was born, Barnes Hospital, part of Washington University, just happens to be one of the best places in the world for aortic valve replacement. And so that's on a Friday morning in July. I'm cleared from the ICU the following morning, which never happens. And I'm home by Tuesday. I don't know if there's a Guinness Book of World Records in terms of speed of healing from such an event. And then Ralph Damiano, who runs all of cardiothoracic surgery at Barnes, one of the best surgeons in the world, comes to see me, pats my leg kind of playfully, and he says, Regan, there's no medical explanation of you. So typically, again, I'm not normal. So typically in your aortic valve, if you have less than 0.2 centimeters of room for blood to flow through the valve, it's considered not able to sustain life. And mine was less than the diameter of a toothpick. And so I said in response, do you believe in Jesus Christ, Dr. Damiano? And I asked that from a wide point of view, right? There's nothing traditional Christian about me, but I love Jesus. He's my teacher. And he said, well, yeah, Regan, I do. I said, well, that's the only explanation I have. Because it's that quality of love, right, that he taught and that he tried to get people to understand, even though everything is a hot mess around all that. He's always, particularly once I learned I was dying, he was my teacher. Okay, so now fast forward. I'm almost dying again of heart inflammation post-surgery, but I'm like, if I was supposed to be dead before, I think I'm going to be fine. So I was very hopeful. And then as my scar healed, it healed in the shape of a crucifix. So explain that. And when I showed it to my surgeon, not only did he weep in front of all of his surgeon colleagues, and people were like, what's up with Ralph? He said, well, Regan, that's another miracle because it's a vertical cut. So yeah, I'm a walking billboard for Jesus. And I take all of that, even though I'm kind of making light of it. I take all of it very seriously. My spiritual practice, my conscious union with God every day, being obedient to that inner voice that I know is smarter than me, has definitely made a big difference. And I used it in Silicon Valley too. I used that connection to help me get deals done faster and know when to pivot out of a job into another. That was all, directed by that same voice.
Is this something other people can connect to? Or are you somewhat special in that? So how do they do it? Is it as simple as the HeartMath thing?
No, I think the thing that is most important about anything that I've said or how to do it is to understand you don't have to do anything to earn your divinity, right? You are inherently divine. What you have as an issue, probably, is you have a connection problem. There's nothing you have to do to create the divinity within. That's already there. But your task as a human being is to understand everything that's in the way of that conscious connection, get rid of it, and spend every day in the quiet, consciously connecting to the most profound love that you've known. And then that serves as scaffolding, right? Like everything's energy, everything's frequency. So if you start, let's say you're just pissed off and you start and you sit down. Well, as you connect to a feeling of love, it's going to take a little more time, a little more devotion to get that frequency up because of where you began, right? So every day is different. There is inherent variability, just like your heart, in this process. So you start with feeling the most elevated emotion that you've ever felt. Start there. Feel it for as long as you can, ideally a half hour in the morning and a half hour at night. And people are like, I don't got that time. It's like, oh, yeah, you do. And just asking for help, right? I mean, there is an energy that is available to you that wants to help you, but you got to do your part, which is to create the inner conditions that foster that conscious connection. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I'm thinking people might struggle with how to do that, though, how to create that inner connection, how to slow down enough to be able to do that. And I'm guessing for a lot of people, it might just be belief.
Oh, that definitely, that your beliefs, what you believe, are either fostering your inner health or not. So, yeah, I mean, and that's not anything that I, as a spiritual teacher, I mean, I can help you understand what you believe and why you believe it. I can offer through my own energetics and embodied wisdom the path forward, but it's up to you. And just like you wouldn't expect to pick up a violin and be able to play at your local symphony, don't expect right out of the gate that any of this is going to make any sense or that you're going to be good at it. I mean, it takes practice. But the beautiful thing about how you're made is that we're all divine. We all can connect to the divinity within. We can all become disciplined in our spiritual practice, but there's things that we have to do less of in order to make the time for that.
Oh, so when you said less of, you weren't talking about anything specific. You mean just creating the space.
Creating the time, creating the commitment. Like, you think you're going to heal from your lived experience in the absence of discipline and devotion? Not going to happen.
What does discipline and devotion look like?
I'll show you. Yeah, making the time. So the discipline is to sit, long spine, grounded sit bones and feet, tall crown, hands over the heart to begin, connecting to the breath here, connecting to that elevated emotion, and noticing what you notice, right? So when you begin that practice, your mind, your monkey mind, your conditioned mind is going to be interrupting constantly. And that's what makes it hard for people because they want to, feel like they're doing it right or doing it well. Well, you won't at first. But ideally, what that time in the quiet does as you're trying to hold on to the felt sense of love and nothing else is it gives you the opportunity to observe and know what's unconsciously running up there.
A whole lot of programming.
Right. But we're so distracted, we don't necessarily even know what that is. So when people say, oh, I can't meditate, I can't quiet my mind. Well, frankly, that's not the point. I mean, you'll ultimately get there if you practice enough. But really, the benefits of meditation right out of the gate is just having the time to notice what you notice. right? Like I always end my yoga classes when we're resting in Shavasana, getting people to understand in that quiet, right, that they're not their body and they're not their mind, because in that quiet, you can witness both. You're the observer, right? You can observe how your body feels. You can observe, even though you may not like it, what's going on up there. So you're clearly not your mind or your body. You're something else. And it's that something else, that transcendent self, that is the gateway, the portal to greater health, to fostering your intuition, to feeling more alive and connected. Not necessarily happy. I think that's a silly goal. It's more about feeling the truth, feeling purposeful. And the devotion is, I mean, we're devoted. It's just, what are we devoted to? You know, I knew guys in the valley with 4 McLarens. Like, first of all, why the hell would you need 4 McLarens? But you're showing what you're devoted to. You're devoted to material acquisition. That's your devotion, right? Or you're devoted to remaining distracted, whether that's through alcohol or television or whatever, right? Like anything you can do to just avoid dealing with yourself, you're devoted to that. And so, you know, what I choose to be devoted to is connecting as best I can every day with the energy of the divine. And every day is different. Some days it's easy and some days it's not.
It's surprising you say that, though, with the connection you have and all the things that have happened. I'm surprised to hear you say that some days it's difficult.
Well, yeah, because everything's energy, right? So depending on the energetics around me, that impacts me. No matter how devoted and disciplined I am, I'm human. Energy impacts me. There's a lot of, I mean, what a collective shit show we're part of right now. And so some of that, depending on what I am choosing to focus on, can impact me. But I always know how to shift it. I always know how to transcend it. But it doesn't mean that there's ease always. I mean, no yogi, no spiritual teacher of any credibility would ever say, "Oh yeah, it's a piece of cake every day, no problem." If they say that, they're lying.
So they still have to suffer like everyone else.
Yeah, it's just how long do you? Like, do you have enough inner facility to know, first of all, oh, in this moment I'm suffering, right? A lot of people don't even have the self-awareness to know that, right? And then when you know that you're suffering emotionally, mentally, physically, there's a do. People do something in response to that. Always. My do, well, it's always my do, but particularly if I'm feeling any kind of dysregulation, is to walk down my driveway into my beautiful yoga center. And maybe it's going to take 3 hours today. People spend 3 hours watching TV every evening. Don't tell me they don't. Or scrolling on their damn phones, looking for something. In fact, I posted today, I'm just like so curious. Like, I have a marketing problem. I don't have an embodiment problem. I have a marketing problem. And I'm so curious, like when people come onto these platforms, what are they looking for? So I asked that question today.
What did people say?
I don't know. I haven't looked at
You don't know. You haven't
my
looked
phone.
yet.
They might not say anything. It might be too confrontive of a question. But I mean, I do think all of this digital noise is more in the way than it's useful, for sure. And I get trapped in that, right? I find myself on my phone and then I'm like, oh my God, a half hour just went by. What the hell? Right? I could have been doing yoga or walking in my woods or petting my cat or kissing my husband or FaceTiming my son in California. Like, I had lots of options, but instead, for a half hour, I'm unconsciously looking at this damn screen. Yeah, I'm human.
So is there hope for us in
Yeah, all the
our
sacred
current state?
books have a happy ending. So ultimately, yes. But now's the time. I mean, there is real, and this is topic for another podcast, there's real spiritual warfare going on. It's real. And so the more people can turn their focus inward, develop a conscious relationship with the divinity that lives in their heart. You know, I'll ask people to close their eyes in the beginning of a yoga class, and I'll say, you know, Jesus in Luke 17:21 says, you know, the kingdom of God is within you. So I ask people to close their eyes and then point on their body. Go ahead, you do it. You do it, Rocky. Close your eyes. And where do you believe that kingdom within you resides? Exactly. Open your eyes. So people look around, everybody's got their hands here. Nobody has their hands here. It's never happened.
Not in your head.
No, so that's the relationship. We intuitively know when asked that it's here. So I don't know if you know that that's true somehow, you can't explain how you know, then wouldn't it make sense to develop more intimacy with that part of you?
And we've talked about that. It's mostly quiet time, meditation. And I know even I sometimes struggle with meditation and getting the quiet. I think we have a unrealistic expectation of what meditation is.
I agree.
Not perfect. And you just have to keep coming back to the centered breath and do the practice little by little. And eventually you get better.
Just like anything, right? And what I would also say is that the energetics of conscious gratitude, right? Like just doing the inner inventory, how much time are you spending focused on all the things that are wrong? Well, there's so many other things that aren't wrong, but that's not where your mental and emotional focus is. So having a gratitude practice, I think that can be incredibly useful just because of the energetics of it, right? So if you're listing the things that you're grateful for, and beyond the list is the felt sense of what it feels to feel grateful for, I don't know, your pet or a sunrise you've seen, or like, it doesn't matter, or your favorite ice cream. I don't care what it is, but feeling the gratitude for that, you do that enough, that begins to change the energetics of you. And that's where it's at.
Little by little.
Right.
Let's just talk about modern life, though. And we've talked a little bit about it. People are distracted, whether it be phones, internet, TV, social media. And yet I think there are other things, though, that keep people distracted and non-focused. And then, as you talked about, we went through COVID where things really got a little bit out of whack. It seems like we're out of that now for the most part.
Okay.
Out of COVID and out of that thinking. And I think if we had another, let's call it scare, I think there'd be a lot more non-compliant people this time around.
Well, I certainly hope so. Yeah, I certainly hope so.
But we shall see.
We'll see. I mean, to me, it kind of begins with like a central question. So you see this with children as they grow up, and then the question is, you know, where are you going to go to college? What are you going to do for your job? You know, blah, 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 as if that is what you're there for, right? To me, like, if you understand that the reason you've incarnated and exist is to understand in a very complex dimension how to love unconditionally, right? That's what all the master teachers have taught, right? So if you understand that that is your purpose, to consciously embody divine love, well, then all the questions are different. So I think it begins there in terms of people understanding why the hell they're here. And if they think it's because they need to get a a degree in computer science from Stanford so that they can buy a house in Palo Alto and then get their McLaren. I mean, if they think that that's the point, well, they'll definitely have to come back. That's for sure. So I think it starts there. And I also believe that as a consequence of a deeply devoted spiritual practice, you'll learn two things. You will learn, because you can't really, I mean, you can read about it in a book, I guess, but it's more you have to experience it. If you know two things, that you're divine and eternal, then everything you do as it relates to living is different. And had we felt that way during COVID, if we truly were more masterful of what I'm talking about, we wouldn't have been afraid. We would have, put our trust in something else. Instead, we were told to trust the science as if it's a static thing. I thought that was hilarious. It's like, no, science is like always evolving and changing. What do you mean trust the science? And then if you actually look at the science, what a colossal mess that was. There wasn't really much science at all. So I think that's our collective task, to know that you're divine, to know that you're eternal, to have something that you do every day that fosters that understanding, and to live, with a lot less fear.
And that's a great way to live.
Right. I mean, when I was told I was dying and needed open heart surgery, even though that was hard on my family, like, I wasn't afraid. I was completely surrendered to God. And it's like, if it's my time, it's my time. I didn't pray to be healed. I prayed for the highest good. And I don't know what that is.
Some questions are unanswerable.
Right. Right. And I do think, it was my spiritual practice that saved my life, certainly. And it was my spiritual practice that just revealed to me the sacred truth of my eternal nature. And I talk about this in the book. I mean, there were some experiences I had after my spiritual awakening. And, the yogis do this. It's part of what it means to truly be a yogi, which is to be able to leave your body at will and return. So when you know how to do that, which I learned how to do at the age of 27, you're not afraid because you're not this. If you can leave this and come back to this, the law of conservation, if people really want to not be mystical about it, the law of conservation teaches what? Energy can't be created or destroyed. So if that's true, what are you worried about?
I think that's a perfect place to leave them.
Good.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's one truth about success you wish more people understood?
That's a hard question, because I'm supposed to be succinct, that it's not what they think it is.
That's true. Most people chase the wrong success, the McLaren in the house.
Right.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
The enormity of healing that I needed to do, because my 20s, particularly before my awakening, which happened at 27, but my choice of partner at the age of 20 when I fell in love, and married at 23. I mean, I was in such a hurry to have this grown-up life. And had I been healed from the trauma I had known by the age of 20, I would have made different decisions. So, but at the same time, I don't have any regret. I don't wish it turned out any different, because it all was what I needed to become who I am right now in this moment.
It's funny how many people at that age want a grown-up life, only to realize it's not what they expected.
No, it's like, why didn't I decide like my mother? Like, why didn't I go to Europe and like backpack? Instead, I had that big corporate job 3 weeks after I graduated.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
No God.
And hopefully by then they may have. It's hard. These are the things that, and this is why they teach you to smoke at 13, because if you don't do that then, chances are later in life it's much harder to. And same thing I think is true about God.
Mm-hmm. Again, because of all the conditioning. And, I know a lot of people who have forsaken a relationship with God because of a traumatic experience they knew within the church. It's like, well, that's a human problem. That's not a God problem. Anyway, that's a whole other podcast. But if you really understand the truth of what these master teachers have come and shared, then you don't need to go to church.
There is that. If people would like to learn more about you in the book, how do they do that?
Sure. So you can visit regancaruthers.com. That's my website. I do want to update it. I have more content I want to put on there. They can find me on Facebook and Instagram. Again, my name, Regan Caruthers, is how they'll find me. And then my book, Tragic Magic, is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And that's in a paperback and ebook. So again, they can go to both of those websites to find it. Oh, and then as of 3 days ago, I have started writing on Substack. And I'm not, asking people to pay me. Maybe I'll do that sometime later. But I just feel like what I embody and what I'm hoping to share can't be done in these little sound bites, videos on Facebook and Instagram. I do a lot of videos on those platforms, but what I have to say and what I embody is just better, I think, communicated through the written word. And so I'm putting essays on Substack. There's 2 so far. And it's only been day 3.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
The constant theme is money doesn't define meaning. We do. And the practice of sitting in stillness, breathing through the heart, and choosing gratitude is the discipline that shifts everything. Maybe it's the one that works for you. Maybe it's something else. You don't have to earn divinity. It's already within you. Your work is to clear away all the noise, to reclaim what your original birthright is, to practice daily gratitude until it changes the frequency of your life. You can always check out Regan's book. The question for you, though, is what belief about success do you need to retire this week so you can make more space for coherence? And do you know someone who could benefit from listening to this episode? Would you do me a favor and share it with them? I'd appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Have an abundant week.